Yes, there was a lot of evidence, and it was clearly displayed by the IDF press spokesperson, Admiral Daniel Nahari. And what he said was this. First of all, he said there were no land, sea, or air Israeli air attacks in that area at that time, just before around 7 o'clock last night. So that was the first thing. The other thing he looked at in some detail, excuse me, was blast pattern, craters, the kind of damage that comes from an airstrike with modern Western weapons, and the kind of damage that comes from a failed attack, and all the fire there also suggesting that there was a lot of propellant, because the attack was took place, he says, by a failed rocket attack, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, firing very, very close to the hospital, in a cemetery very close to the hospital. And that, he says, accounts for the blast pattern, the fire, that kind of damage. And then he released also conversations in Arabic and intercepts between Hamas militants actually getting the information, hearing about it, saying, what, where, our shrapnel? It's Palestinian shrapnel, it's not Israeli shrapnel, and having that conversation amongst themselves. And then he said that the reason Hamas came out so quickly to blame Israel was because the thought that it actually was a Palestinian error, that's not a Hamas error, an Islamic Jihad error, but nevertheless an error by another Palestinian group, had to be dealt with very quickly for it not to be a black mark on them. Much happier, says the IDF spokesman, for it to be a black mark on Israel.
And of course, there is this explanation by the Israeli forces, but that's probably not going to do much when it comes to the Palestinian side and how they view this, especially the people and the victims and the families of those victims.
That's right. You know, the horse has bolted. Let's say the Israeli version is the correct one. 5 hours later, a lot of evidence, it's just too late, because the version that is now believed in the Arab world, not just in the Palestinian territories. We saw protests in the Palestinian territories in the West Bank, where there's the Palestinian president has declared 3 days of mourning. We saw protests in Jordan. We saw protests in another Arab country with relations with Israel, Morocco. We saw condemnations by Arab leaders, including Arab leaders who have normalization deals with Israel. So I think that opportunity to persuade the world has gone. For Israel to persuade the world of its narrative it's gone. I think where Israel is aiming now is to Joe Biden, the US president who's currently here, and to Western leaders. I think what the IDF spokesperson said is that he's going to present this evidence and evidence in more detail than he presented to journalists, to American military leaders and to European and other military leaders. I think that's the battle that Israel is fighting at the moment, because the narrative or public relations, whatever word you want to use, that battle is lost.